Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is a special presentation I'm doing for New Year's. If you missed my daily ruling earlier today, then I made an announcement there where I said that I would not be uploading every day during the year 2022. In recognition of that fact, and also because everybody loves top 10 lists this time of year, I decided to go through a top 10 list of my favorite daily rulings from the past year. If you're wondering where this list came from, it's basically my top 10 videos in terms of viewership over the past year, with a little bit of curation from me to try to correct for the fact that some of these videos have been out for nearly a full year, while others have literally only been out for a couple of weeks. Ready? Let's get started. In the number 10 spot, I've got Blood Moon plus Urborg. This is no surprise to me, and probably not to a lot of people who are already familiar with judging or with this type of ruling in general. This one comes to us straight out of the Judge Vault, and it's very well known within the Magic Judge community because both of the cards involved are very heavily played, and it's also a relatively unintuitive interaction. If you asked a normal person off the street what the right answer was, they might know or they might say something wrong, but either way, I'm guessing they probably would not be very confident about what they were saying. One of my hopes with this video was that I would be able to have some resource for anybody who wanted to figure out what the answer was, and for people to be able to just type in Blood Moon plus Urborg into YouTube and come up with a video that gave up a complete and concise explanation for what the answer was and a little bit of why it was that way. This video is one of the de facto examples of how dependencies work, and so therefore it's interesting not just to people who have it in their games, but also to people who are trying to come up with a good example of why this concept exists and what some of the consequences are. In our number 9 spot, I've got this video here, which is our most recent one. In fact, it came out a couple of weeks ago as the patron pick for the month of December. I have to admit, this topic was put in the poll for the patron pick for the last few months before December, but December is the month that it finally won. Every month, I was secretly hoping that this one would lose because I wasn't really confident that I would be able to make a video that did this topic justice or was really worth watching to anybody. After I saw the viewership numbers for this video, I slept a little bit easier seeing how popular it was. As a judge, it is a little bit difficult for me to know what kind of topics my audience is going to find engaging and entertaining. That's one reason why I think it's so important to have stuff like the patron picks, which push me a little bit outside of my comfort zone, just because I never know whether I'm going to be able to do a good job or not. And having some sort of structured way that incorporates risks into that sort of equation, well, that definitely does help me become a better video producer in general and be a little bit more in touch with my audience. In the number 8 spot, I've got a video involving Superstar from Modern Horizons Urza Saga. This one asks what would happen if you had a Thespian stage copying it, and then you use the Thespian stage ability to make it a copy of another land in response to the third Saga ability. This is a really interesting ruling, and there's a lot of really cool moving parts dealing with some rulings that you probably haven't seen before, because they don't come up in a lot of situations. I got the idea for this ruling from one of my viewers, who left the comment on one of my previous daily rulings. After doing a little bit of research on this ruling, I have to admit I feel a little bit jealous that I don't get to say I came up with this one myself. So much stuff going on, and not a lot of it being really well known, makes this an awesome ruling for the number 8 spot in my countdown. Next up, we've got number 7, which is Spellskite plus Kolaghan's Command. This is another one straight out of the Judge Vault, and it used to be extremely important to know because both of these were cards that were heavily played in Modern before the release of Modern Horizons. Spellskite has the ability to change the target of other spells, and Kolaghan's Command has the ability to target something twice. Whether or not you can use Spellskite to be both of the targets of Kolaghan's Command is a really interesting question, and something a lot of people get confused about, especially because the answer is completely different if you look at some other cards with some similarly worded effects, such as Electrolyze. This one got shared to Reddit, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why this is one of the first videos on my channel that actually attracted a pretty big audience. Thanks so much if you're the person who shared this one on Reddit and got me all those views. Now for the number 6 spot on my list, which is my video about naming a card. Now, I've got to level with you, I kind of feel like most of the people watching this video were just trying to watch me say the name of the card in the thumbnail. Don't get me wrong, Meddling Mage is a really interesting card and all, but I just don't think that that's the sort of thing that's going to drive that much viewers, even if this is a pretty interesting topic in its own right. Fortunately for me, I did manage to say it all the way through without messing up, and you get to see that in the video. However, you also get to see a little bit of the bloopers, and I've got to admit, I spent a full 8 minutes doing takes in order to find one where I was able to say the whole name all the way through without stumbling or tripping over it. Fortunately for me, I consider this time well spent, because you never really know when you're going to have to be able to pronounce Asmarana Mardicadist and Koldakar. Fortunately from now on, I'm going to be ready. In contrast to the previous spot, my video on Dress Down and Evoke is probably driven mostly by people who are really interested in how these cards worked in the competitive environment. Back when I made this video, Elementals was an extremely popular Modern deck. Even though its market share has fallen off some amount since then, it still is important to know because a lot of decks in Modern manage to play these Evoke cards, especially ones that have some other kind of deck building restriction on them. So for example, the Living End decks or the Crashing Footfalls decks, they have to play cards that have a high enough converted mana cost that they won't get hit with a Cascade. On the other hand, the evoke cost can be whatever you want, and if that's how you're casting the spell, then that's how you can cast the spell. That helps you get some answers to some hate cards and not break the bank on the mana cost. Dress Down is a really interesting card that has a lot of non-intuitive interactions, and so playing Dress Down in response to the evoke cards, well, that certainly is one of those interactions, and it's not really at all obvious what the right answer should be for how these cards interact. Fortunately, the popularity of both of these has kind of gone down since then, but it's still important for judges to know because a lot of evoke cards are still very well in the format, and Dress Down is definitely still a premier card in Modern. Number 4 on my list is my episode about Ludwig plus Enduring Angel. This one was really interesting to me. Another suggestion from a viewer, I had to research quite a lot in order to confidently say what I thought the answer would be. And what an answer it is. A lot of the time, I get a little bit disappointed because when I start doing some research, the answer ends up not being the coolest thing that it possibly could have been. But boy, is that not the case here. If you managed to miss this video, shame on you, be sure to watch it afterwards, but I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler. If you manage to use Ludwig to copy Enduring Angel, then every time your life total is going to go below 0, you are going to transform the Ludwig. You can do that because it's an honest-to-goodness double-faced card that can transform. Also, even though you transformed, you're still going to be copying Enduring Angel just like you were before. And that's really awesome because it means that the replacement effect that keeps you from losing the game is still going to be in play. On the other hand, you are not going to lose the game because you didn't transform this permanent, because hey, you sure did. You turned it over just like a normal transforming double-faced card would do. Because this is a really cool ruling, and because both of these cards happen to both be in the same exact standard set, that's a really exciting possibility. I didn't get any notes from anybody who claimed to be able to pull this one off in a sealed event, but if you saw or know somebody who did it, I would definitely love to hear about that feat. Number 3 spot on my list is what would happen if you played a time stop on turn 4 of extra turns. And whereas with most of these other videos, I've got some kind of an idea where the popularity came from, this one honestly has me stumped. I mean, it's a pretty cool question and all, and it deals with some parts of rules and policy that you might not get to deal with a lot, but at the same time, the topics involved are things that could show up on a normal level 1 judge exam, and so I kind of figured that this one would be relatively well known. Time Stretch isn't a really playable card in a lot of formats where extra turns are a thing. However, there certainly are extra turn cards that have seen a lot of play in Standard, especially recently, so I feel like that might be where some of the popularity comes from. And it is also kind of an interesting thing to think about, because if you gave it to a normal person who didn't know anything about what the answer should be, it would probably be pretty tough for them to come up with an answer that they would be confident in, which is another thing that makes this sort of question really appealing. Again, I obviously try to pick ideas that I think are going to be interesting and engaging for a lot of people, but as this video here shows, sometimes I don't predict very well. And that's another reason why I was so excited to see this one get as many views as it did. The number 2 spot on my list is another Judge classic. What would happen if you had Opalescence and Humility in play at the same time? Honestly, this one is the Judge Vault question, and it's probably the most famous rules question of all time. Obviously, this is the first episode of my series, which gave it a little bit of extra push, but I think that even if it was somewhere buried in the middle, a lot of people would be really interested to see it. I kind of almost wish that it was a little bit later on in the series, because the production value, well, let's just say, I'm proud of the advances that I've made in the quality of my videos from a videography standpoint. Fortunately, this is an interesting enough topic that it looks like enough people were able to make it through the crappy audio quality and my inability to look at the camera to make it into our number 2 spot for this series. Finally, in our number 1 spot, we've got Blood Moon plus Urza's Saga. This one really does tick all of the boxes when it comes to what makes for a great rules and policy video. You've got two cards that are extremely playable in a variety of formats. You've got an interaction that's extremely complicated, makes use of a lot of really not well-known rules, and has a really clean and surprising outcome. And of course, it doesn't hurt that I came out with this video within about a week of Modern Horizons release, while everybody was still hot and ready to think about how Urza Saga would interact with the rest of this format. This video was shared on a lot of sites, and it got me hundreds of subscribers and extra people watching my videos. If you're one of the 19,000 people who watched this video and ended up subscribing to my channel, thank you, and I hope that the rest of the videos on this channel have been as interesting as this one, although I know that they're probably not going to end up being as popular. And that is my top 10 videos for the year 2021. Thanks so much to everybody who watched my videos or who helped them become as popular as they are now. I'm really excited to get to see what kind of awesome rulings I'm going to be able to do in 2022. But that's all I have for this year. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.